I also think it's notable that we have found Laura's version of talking about the courts, and that is somehow local zoning rules. And I love that.
I'm obsessed. You have no idea.
Three women talking about politics?
If democracy had a group chat, this would be it. Welcome to Organizing Chaos with Roots to Results, where we unpack the chaos that is politics in 2025 from an organizer's perspective and give you the tools you need to do something about it. I'm Meg Simons, Creative Director with Roots to Results, and I'm here with Roots to Results founders, organizers, and all-around political badasses, Laura Miranda Brown.
Hey.
And Sarah Virgo.
Hi.
So are we a nation of states? What is the state of our nation? Today, we're talking about local politics, what it looks like, and why it matters. Laura, I know you and Sarah are deeply rooted in your local political scene. So tell me, why is it important to know things like who your local school board members are? How did you even get involved? And how long do you think it'll take Sarah to notice the Hamilton quote at the top of the episode?
First, Sarah's never going to notice the Hamilton number at the top of the episode. She's going to Google it right after this and be like, wait, which one of these is a lyric?
We're going to have her Googling every weird thing I say, being like, is this a secret theater lyric? And the answer is probably yes.
Sometimes it just happens like without even trying, right? It's just there. So the question is, why is it so important? Well, in reality, the day-to-day of your lived experience in your town is pretty much entirely governed by what's happening at the local level. And I would like to give you the example of how I got deeply involved in my town. I basically started going to zoning board meetings because I got a note in the mail, a certified letter from a neighbor saying that they planned to expand their house. Pause. Normally, who cares? This instance, we all cared because the guy had actually illegally built his house to begin with.
Hold on. How do you illegally build a house?
Well, you knock down some trees and you dig a hole and you pour a foundation within 48 hours, which is too fast for the city to notice. Anyway, moving on. The point is, I showed up to that zoning board meeting to be like, yo, I have a problem. Please don't let this guy's house get any bigger because we're already flooding. And, zoning and planning board meetings being what they are, it got carried, which means that initial notice was for like February. Issue wasn't even heard until like the following June. But I kept having to go to every single meeting because I didn't know if he was going to show up again. So when you just start showing up, people notice, because I was one of like 3 people who kept going to zoning board meetings, and then there was a vacancy, and they said to me, would you be interested in joining the board since you're here anyway? And so I got appointed by the mayor. So I recommend going down to City Hall and talking to your Department of Public Works if you've got something like you need a new street light. That's who you got to talk to. If you don't want a new apartment building put up in your town because you have too much traffic, you need to be going to your planning board meetings or joint zoning board meetings or even the city council. So potholes, trash pickup, speed control, all covered by your local government. School testing, school curriculum, and funding is hybrid, both between local, county, and state, as well as federal. I mean, there are a lot of ways to get involved, and I will stop talking now because if I keep going, I won't stop.
I feel like so often, especially living in DC, when you ask people like why they got into politics, people will be like, oh, well, I watched The West Wing and like that made me want to get involved in politics. And I'm like, girl, politics is not The West Wing. Politics is Parks and Rec. It is making 25 calls about a pothole. These are the offices that actually govern the things that run your life.
New Jersey is such an amazing place. I do love it. One of the challenges is that we have many layers of government. And so the street you live on may be what appears to be a town road, but it's actually a county road. And so your town can't pave it or fix it or dig it up or do anything without applying to the county. And then the county has to do it all. And the county has to care enough about your block versus everybody else in the county to pave it. So before you go and complain, make sure you're complaining to the right entity.
I just want to highlight how powerful these positions really are. Y'all have heard of Kim Davis, right? She was the county clerk in Texas who decided she didn't want to have to issue marriage licenses to queer people and made her challenge all the way up to the Supreme Court just over the summer. Thankfully, the Supreme Court decided not to take the case, but local government can affect not just the people who are living in that local area, but it can have national implications too with these challenges, and especially with the way the far right has captured the courts over the last few years. They've created these pipelines to be able to make these, what should be local issues national. That was just my obligatory, I have to make this episode about the courts in some way. It's my constant segment. We'll put a soundtrack in. We'll see if we can get the Dick Wolf bum bum to just underscore the court sections. But speaking of a sound effect, insert one here because I want to play a game. I'm going to name something I've seen in the news, and I want you to tell me what local council or board or commission or governmental body might have control over it. Let's say my school board is pulling books about LGBTQ kids from the school library. Who do I yell at? No, sorry, we're not yelling at local government employees. Who do I take this up with?
It depends on the employee.
You can absolutely yell at these people.
No,
okay, great.
These are going to be elected officials. Yell away.
Yeah, the elected officials can take it, and if things are not working properly or people are not following guidelines, you can yell at those people too. Every state runs things a little bit differently. This is basically the answer for most places, but there are some weird places that don't operate like this. But the decisions like that are never at random, so someone local made that decision almost always, and it usually leads back to your local school board. So school boards approve policies that schools implement within their district. They decide on curriculum, guidelines, budgets, who to hire, the operations. School board doesn't actually... your superintendent is also involved. You may hear them referred to as a CSA or an executive director, but it's the superintendent essentially. Most are appointed, some are hired, some are elected in some states. I think Florida is one of those places where you can elect your superintendent in certain counties. But boards essentially control the what, and the superintendent controls the how. So a board of ed will establish a goal of curriculum improvement. But then the superintendent can say, okay, we need to ban certain books to improve these curriculum standards, as an example. That will still require board approval. So when you're thinking about elections, you have to make sure that people that you're electing to those positions are not going to push agendas that will differ from what you believe in and what you'd like to see in your local district. So while, most people are focused on president and governor, your local school board controls much more of your day-to-day life. Typically, elections for positions on boards like this take place every year. So it's a great opportunity to get involved, and if you are upset about something like a book ban, your school board is almost always the first place to start.
As our resident childless millennial and our resident gay, if you don't want baby bigots in your town, care about your school board, even if you don't have kids.
If there are organizers listening to us right now who care really deeply about education, you can have a lot of impact just by starting a local organization that will, in a nonpartisan way, ask the candidates the same questions so that you can post it on a Facebook group. So a lot of times these candidates don't have enough budget to create a website, and they're hard to find, and you can't find any information on what they've said or what they're promising to do other than hoping they knock on your door. So if you really want to have an influence, or at least help your fellow neighbors figure out who to vote for, take it on. It's not that heavy a lift to once a year ask candidates a pre-selected number of questions and then publish the responses. Candidates are often very happy to participate in that because there's no place else to get this information out. The local newspapers are disappearing. It's very hard to get in front of voters. And so if you can go ahead and create a Facebook group or a WhatsApp chat, depending on your neighborhood, it could be very, very helpful to both the candidates, your community, and your entire educational system.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, my next question is a little harder. What if my county decides to put an AI data center in an old mall, even though it will pollute the air and water and drive our energy prices up? Now who do I yell at?
Okay, I'm going to take this one.
Okay.
It is a hard question to answer because it depends. And it depends literally on what your state and local zoning rules are. If a private company buys up or leases a space that is physically located in an area that allows for data center usage, then there's nothing really you can do, right? If the rules as written allow for the activity to take place within that zone, then you don't really have much to do other than run for office and change the laws. That's a long-term play. It's not an immediate solution. You're probably not going to stop that data center, but you could stop it from happening elsewhere in your town. If it's a private business that then sets up shop in a place where it's not allowed, say it's in a more downtown area where it's a mixed usage type of area, right? Shops on the bottom, apartments on the top, small businesses, that kind of thing. Then they're going to have to go in front of some governing board, a planning board, a city council meeting, something. And they're going to have to state their case on why, what the public benefit would be to putting this particular use in that space. And that's when you have a real opportunity. That's when you have a chance to grab all your neighbors, point out to them how terrible this is for you guys from an environmental, from an environmental lens, from a community lens, from a energy price lens, from an affordability lens. There are lots of ways to get people on board, right? The reasons may not all be the same, but the end goal is bring them in. Everyone should come out to the public meeting and make public comment. It is far less likely that something will get approved if there is an overwhelming amount of community sentiment against it. At least that's, in theory, how it's supposed to work, right? I can't say this enough. If the people in charge are not listening to their constituency, run against them. Nobody gets to sit in a job forever just because they got it once. This is your opportunity to make your voice heard, right? And if you're not heard, go shopping for a new candidate.
Primary the shit out of everyone. I also think it's notable that we have found Laura's version of talking about the courts, and that is somehow local zoning rules. And I love that.
I'm obsessed. You have no idea.
Part of this podcast is public education, and part of this podcast is just me forcing Laura and Sarah to answer my questions about things happening in my own town.
If they're happening to you, they're happening to other people.
Yeah, exactly. I'm relatable.
But I think, Meg, to also add to what Laura's saying, these are opportunities for great organizing to take place as well. So if the AI data center is being proposed, a lot of people, I would assume, would hear that and just think, this is great. It's going to bring jobs in. This is really cool. And they're not thinking about the other implications that come from that kind of data center existing in that sort of space. So I think if you're someone who's maybe, never done this before, gotten involved in becoming an elected or making public comment, it's a great way to just organize with neighbors and say, are you happy about this? Do you actually know what's going on here? And just simplifying things for others is it's a great opportunity to say, we don't want this here and here's why. For anyone who's feeling frustrated by things in their area, you can also sort of become a mini organizer and get your neighbors and friends to care too.
Sarah, I have another education question for you.
Sure.
So I just read an article about how access to school-issued laptops might be responsible for both a decline in academic performance and giving kids access to icky stuff on the internet that I don't want them to see, with no supervision. If I want new policies that can kind of like curb how much access my, I don't know, kid, but my niece is getting to the internet through these kind of like devices that parents have no control over, who do I talk to? Because I had unfiltered access to the internet as a child, and that was a mistake.
And that was a different internet.
Yeah, and that was a very different internet. I was fully chatting up strangers at 12 on the internet. I would love my niece to not experience that. Yeah.
We all were, but it also took 20 minutes to load a photo. So you weren't going to like mistakenly see something that you really shouldn't, right? There's some really traumatizing images on the internet that kids really shouldn't see that load in 0.5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the generation of like rotten.com, which I don't even know if that website still exists, but like that was the go-to to watch like crime scene photos and things like that. But anyway, yeah, the answer to this question is it's local and it primarily involves your school board. So every local board of education has a set of policies that will dictate their specific district operations. So in most states, there are different kinds of policies. So you have federal policies, policies that are implemented and governed by the state, and then you have your local Board of Ed policies. So all of those are part of their general policy manual. So to answer your question, in most cases, there would be a set of policies that would cover technology and what's allowed, and like internet filters or limits on usage or monitoring software, but the superintendent would control the implementation and oversight of those policies. I think it's important to remember when we're talking about policies and some of the regulations that dictate how these things are implemented, there's always a really solid chain of command in place for every district. So when you have an issue like that or concern, your first stop should really be your teacher. Talk to the teacher about what exists in the classroom. If you aren't then satisfied with that answer, you feel like it needs more attention, you go to your principal. Then you go to your superintendent, you go to your school board. Like there's a way, whatever it is in your state, that's kind of the method you should follow. You're getting more done if you follow that way. You can also always go to a school board meeting and ask questions during public comment and just say, I'm curious about this. There will almost always be someone else in the audience that has concerns as well.
I love that we gave people both like a high effort and a low effort like way to get involved, like a pants on versus like I don't have to put pants on option. I love that we're giving flexibility, we're giving options.
Okay, Meg. I want to ask a question. You came up with this game, but I'm going to ask a question.
Okay.
If my state creates new congressional maps that I'm pretty sure are illegal, how do I challenge that? Where do I go?
Oh, you know, it's my favorite time. It's time to talk about the courts. Yeah, this is once again one of those things where like every state handles it a little bit differently. Some of them are handled by commission. Some of them are done through, trickery and backroom deals. You just kind of never know what you're getting. And oftentimes, like we're seeing in Texas right now, they're bullshit. They are created to shove people into tiny districts to absolutely minimize their political power. And the best way to challenge a map is to file a lawsuit and challenge those maps in local courts. And those local courts might end up going all the way to the Supreme Court. But the best way to get maps that fairly represent your districts, if you have a map that doesn't do that, is to challenge them in courts. Final question. The rent, as they say, is too damn high. Who do I call?
I think this is like a very layered response because almost all parts of local government impact the cost of rent. And I think you can speak to a school board member about this or a school board commissioner because the way that the schools are performing directly relates to housing cost almost always. City council has a lot to do with that. Is it harder for people to find housing and that's why it's more, expensive? Is there a county official that you can speak to? Because there are laws governing the cost of utilities that's making, rent and cost of living higher. You can speak to someone at the state level. Maybe the governor is proposing policies that make housing completely unaffordable. Maybe it's overdevelopment. Like I think that housing and the cost of housing really is connected to every part of government. But you can certainly start local and start speaking to local electeds about what they think and what policies they can implement to control it. Maybe there's like a rent control policy or an ordinance that can be put forth.
Ooh, bad news, folks. That sound means we went over our 20-minute limit for the episode. We committed to unpacking the chaos in 20 minutes or less, and we meant it. So, if you want to hear what we had to leave on the cutting room floor, check out our social media feeds at @OrganizingChaosPod. We'll be back in 2 weeks. To close out our inaugural season of Organizing Chaos, we are hosting the first annual GTFO Awards, where we will name all the things we hope don't follow us into 2026. And you'll get a chance to vote on your picks. We can't wait to hear what you're ready to kick to the curb as we head into the new year. Until next time, go outside, touch some grass, primary the shit out of everyone. And remember, the group chat is only part of the movement. We'll see you next time. Bye!